differently here at The Report. April 30th marks President Biden's first 100 days in office following his inauguration on January 20th. Since FDR, the first 100 days in president's administration is seen as a symbolically significant benchmark to measure a president's early success in office. This week, we'll be discussing specific aspects of Biden's presidency thus far,
followed by a look at the key pieces of legislation and policies he has enacted during his first 100 days.
And finally, we're committed to bringing you the news, views, and info to go on this episode of the Report Roundtable Discussion. I'm Amanda Mendoza.
I'm Brie Eastlick.
I'm Jorge Flores.
And I'm Tristan Maglino. As you can see, we are continuing to practice social distancing and are going to conduct our episodes via Zoom for the foreseeable future. Although we cannot be together in person, we invite you all to continue to be part of the discussion. Follow us on our Twitter at The Report CSUF or on our Titan TV Instagram at Titan TV CSUF to keep in touch with us and view our new content. Starting off with our first story, after President Biden and Vice President Harris led a nationwide memorial on the eve of Inauguration Day for the 400,000 Americans who have lost their lives due to COVID-19, as we now enter May, things are looking quite differently.
Our goal by July 4th is to have 70% of adult Americans with at least one shot.
Recently, the Center for Disease Control released new data showing California has the lowest COVID-19 case rates in the nation. The CDC states California's current rate is approximately 39 cases per 100,000 people. This comes as California, among other states, initially struggled with vaccine rollout, only reserving vaccines for healthcare workers, elderly, and high-risk individuals. However, on April 19th, President Biden expanded eligibility to all adults, 2 weeks ahead of his initial deadline for states. Currently, out of the 32 million California residents who are eligible for the vaccine, a little over half have at least received their first dose. So everyone, it's great to see that, wow, surprisingly, California is at the lowest in terms of all the states in terms of COVID case rates. That's great to see. And that's all due to part in having clear guidelines, mask mandates, social distancing, and just a clear focus on getting everyone vaccinated. And especially when you look at the tiers of California, 38 out of 58 counties are in the orange tier. That's great to see, okay? But now that Biden in his first 100 days has, had a sense of urgency to focus on COVID, distributing the vaccines throughout all over the nation, the next problem that Biden has to administer to is vaccine hesitancy. Okay, although that in his first 100 days, he exceeded his goal plan of 100 million shots by administering over 200 million shots in his first 100 days. Vaccine hesitancy is the problem. Okay, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 16% of U.S. adults are hesitant to get the vaccine. 49% of those who say no are worried about the side effects. But what surprised me was that 28% of those who are hesitant don't believe they need the vaccine. And that is a problem, folks. If we're trying to get to a sense of normalcy and herd immunity, we need everyone's cooperation. So I wanted to ask you all, what do you guys think about this issue of vaccine hesitancy? Should the Biden administration place focus on this? What are your thoughts, Brie?
I definitely think that we can kind of relate this to kind of what we talked about last week. Personally, I think that, when it comes to mandates, I think that we can really see them in schools possibly. I mean, look at Cal State Fullerton, for example. They're trying to get it approved to have students who are coming back in the fall to have the vaccine, So I think that when it comes to possibly mandating the situation, I don't think that it's going to have to come from a national level. I think that it's going to have to come, from smaller levels, whether it be for schools or businesses. So I don't think it's really realistic for the government to kind of force everyone to get the vaccine. I think that if there is a mandate, it is going to be at a smaller level. It's definitely something that I think we can possibly see in the future. But as of right now, I don't think that they're going to force anything. I think it'll be a little bit more in the future once we see more of those vaccines, kind of people getting the vaccine. I think it's going to happen more, when things start to calm down. What about you, Jorge?
Totally, and in this case, I completely agree with you, Brie. This is a very complex topic that we can talk about. And having the public health issue related to the national government, that could be a little disturbing for some people. And what I mean by this is that their freedom of decision. Some people, they don't want to take the vaccine, and we need to respect that. I want to point out more about Biden's administration and their great job having 200 million vaccines before his first 100 days. I think that should be something that we should be focusing more Because like we saw during the last administration of Donald Trump, there was a big difference. While Donald Trump, he was trying to avoid the situation, saying that it's not a big deal. Biden is trying, first of all, with his first, the mask mandate for the first 100 days, it worked. And now having this vaccination possible for most of Americans. So I think that's a great accomplishment. And once again, when it comes about a mandate for people to take the vaccine, get the vaccine by force, I don't think that's very reasonable. So those are my thoughts. What about you, Amanda?
Personally, Jorge, I do think it's reasonable. However, I will say that on a more positive note, California has been getting vaccinated at a rapid pace. And so personally, while I do think vaccine hesitancy is a serious problem, I think for at least looking at the California rates, I think that it won't be as much of a problem as we think it will be, assuming that these people decide to get their second dose. And in regards to a possible vaccine mandate, I believe if both people get shots of the vaccine as predicted and we reach herd immunity, I don't think there'll be such a mandate for a while. But as time moves on, I think it'll be integrated more. It'll be into the required vaccines to go to school or even certain workplaces, kind of like Bree said. Moving on to our next topic, the first quarter of 2021 has been filled with consistent, horrific news of mass shootings that have killed many. These tragic events that have taken place since President Biden's inauguration into office have placed an urgent responsibility on his shoulders to end gun violence. Earlier in April, President Biden initiated 6 executive actions on gun control that are, unfortunately, expected to make little change in our communities. Since then, Biden has had to plead to Congress, who have had to put a hold on any definite decision. As he waits for Congress to come to a consensus, he has been in close contact with the Justice Department to make efforts to stop the spread of untraceable ghost guns, put restrictions on devices that advance the stability and accuracy of firearms, and devise a red flag legislation where family members or police officers can ask the court to bar a person from accessing firearms if they are a danger to themselves or to others. I also think it's important to note that just because the public sides with Biden in terms of gun control, that does not mean that Congress will be swayed by the public. According to CNN, quote, 57% of Americans said they believe that laws covering the sale of firearms should be more strict, a notable decline from March of 2018, when 67% of Americans held that view, and 34% of the laws said that they should be kept as they are now. End quote. But regardless, Biden has nominated James Chapman to look over the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. So knowing this information and the fact that we are still living in a pandemic, do you guys think there will be any changes to gun control laws within the near future? What are your thoughts, Tristan?
Well, Amanda, the reality is that lasting gun control reforms can only be achieved if the Democratic Congress members can find consensus not only with themselves, but with the GOP members. These executive actions that we've already seen that Biden's trying to do with ghost guns and pistol braces, they're going to help in a limited extent, but they're trying to do things for the long run. In his first 100 days, the prioritization for Biden was obviously on COVID first, and that problem is being mitigated through the widespread vaccination distributions. Okay, the second prioritization for Biden was relief because of what the pandemic has affected our country, and that was aided with the COVID relief bill. The third issue that I believe is gun violence and reform, but it wasn't a topic that wasn't not on everyone's minds when Biden was first inaugurated. It was an issue that kind of boiled up and it just grew and it exploded, as we've seen in the mass shootings in Atlanta and Boulder. And according to Gun Violence Archive, as of yesterday, there have been over 166 mass shootings in 2021, leading to about 14,000 gun-related deaths. And we've seen tragedies such as Dante Wright, Ma'Khia Bryant, the list can go on and on. So that being said, change needs to happen. I mean, it's important for Congress to feel pressure from not just Biden himself, but from the people in order to create long-lasting reform. Congress can say all they want, offering thoughts and prayers to the victims. But as Biden says, it's time to cut to the chase and take action. And I believe that change must happen no matter what. What are your thoughts, Bree?
Yeah, Tristan, the pandemic, as you were saying, it's going to be the number one priority for a while longer. As Congress stays divided, I think that they're going to keep pushing it off as much as possible. I mean, there's been so many mass shootings and deaths from guns, and look how much that's changed. Like, things from that has changed. Not much. What I do appreciate is Biden's going to keep fighting for it, during his whole time in office. And we're going to possibly see maybe a little bit of change in the future, but over his 4 years, we're going to have to see where the pandemic leads, you know, how long it's going to go on, and then he'll possibly be able to focus on guns. I don't think that this is a loss within the 100 days. Like you were saying, you know, it wasn't his top priority. So once the pandemic kind of starts to die down and we can get things back to normal, then I hope to see more change of it in the future. What do you think, Jorge?
You know, guys, when it comes about this specific topic, I see this as the other face of the coin. Now, while Biden was trying to pursue like a proper plan for COVID-19, and he did it, and that's great, there's another problem that is trying to born again in our country, and that's when it comes about the mass shootings. Just like Biden mentioned in the speech before Congress, he said that he received our country in crisis. And I think this is another crisis that we need to take action. Just like you mentioned, Tristan, yes, it's very difficult for Congress to pass a law or a bill or a gun reform in this case, when you need the other side, the Republican, the Reds. However, I think that something good that I've been looking at and researching is when it comes about the activism. I think there's been a lot of activism, whether it's Black Lives Matter or any other vulnerable communities that they are trying to push gun reforms even more to Congress. And I think that's something that we really need today, because if it's not them, who are we going to start putting more pressure on? And I think that the Congress and our legislature, they are noticing that. Now, there has been a lot of mass shootings during the past months, and that's unbelievable. That's historic. And for sure, at least for the national government, for Biden, he knows that's a problem that he needs to address now. Well, in other news, President Biden has also pledged to tackle immigration overhaul in his address to Congress last Wednesday. The president plans to call into action to pass his proposal, which will include a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants and funding for security upgrades at the border. According to an administration official, this move is an attempt to Biden to show how serious he is on the subject of immigration policy. After being under attack by the conservatives over the migrant surge at the border, during his campaign, he promised to send an immigration bill to Congress on his first day of administration. But such legislation was put on the back burner as he focused on other issues in the White House, including the $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief bill and his recent infrastructure proposal. Once again, we were just talking about how he moved this important topic to the side because of the COVID-19. However, I want to point out, and this is what I want to ask you, that he first mentioned in his first addresses to the public that he will take this topic seriously, and there is going to be a way for undocumented to have a pathway to citizenship. Now, I want to ask you guys, how factible do you think that this bill or this reform on immigration can happen? We already talked last week that there has been a changes in the wording when it comes about people from stop calling them illegal to undocumented. That's great, but we really need a progress here. And we have the time on our backs. We just have 3 years for this to happen. So I want to ask you, what do you think about this? Do you think this is going to happen in the next years? What are your thoughts, Amanda?
Well, Jorge, if I'm being honest, I think this is such a controversial bill that I don't know what change will happen within the next few years. Also considering that, plus the fact we're focusing on coronavirus, and like Bree mentioned in the past story, the fact that there's also gun reform, I think there's so much on his plate, so I don't know what's going to happen. But you also have to consider the facts that he considers this a crisis. According to CNN, there were also more than 23,000 migrant children in government custody, and the amount of unaccompanied children within border control custody lowered from 6,000 at its peak in March, and now averages at 2,400 within the past week, which notably is slightly under the peak of when Donald Trump was president in 2019. And so while the Biden administration was responsible for this sharp decrease recently by trying to transfer the minors out of border control custody, I do think that there's still a lot more work to be done. However, I do appreciate what he's doing to make progress right now, but in terms of any passable bill happening within the near future, I'm still unsure.
Once again, everyone, I feel like this situation, the border crisis, it's a matter of partisanship. In reality, it's going to be difficult to convince these Republicans. Like the Republicans under Trump's belief himself, they believe that Biden's bill will fall short because that, these tens of thousands of people that are pouring into the country. And as Trump notes, he's calling them criminals. And that's what a lot of the Republicans are thinking, according to Bloomberg. Although Biden quotes, he says that immigrants have done so much for America during this pandemic and throughout our history, end quote. As we've seen with our agricultural workers, they've been really important for us during this whole pandemic, providing us food to the table. In a sense, this bill, it may be a matter of either emotional or humanity's sake when you feel for these migrants, why they're coming here to America in the first place. As we've seen with the COVID pandemic, they've experienced 2 hurricanes, perceived relaxation under the Biden administration, or are they going to look at stuff that are on paper, whether it's gangs, the war on drugs? A lot of people can feel for the migrants, and of course, there's a concern for America's security and stability first. And it's a problem that's gonna be difficult because, like I said before, it's partisanship, and it can be very difficult to reach an agreement with both sides. What are your thoughts on that, Bree?
In order for Biden's plan for immigration, for immigrants to possibly become citizens, he's going to need 10 Republican seats for it to pass. This is going to be a very difficult feat. So in order for this to happen, I don't think that it's a loss for Biden not to really have much passed on immigration in his first 100 days, because it's going to take so much time in order to get 10 plus Republicans on board with this. He signed an order on his first day, an executive order, stop the building of the wall. And I think that's huge. With a huge surge of migrants, though, as you guys were saying, especially children, I think this needs to be more of a priority going forward. We hear talk about it, and we hear a whole bunch of talk about it, but we haven't seen much change. But you know what? How about we go into American foreign policy and we kind of shift here? We start off with his announcement of the United States withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan. This decision will bring an end to America's longest war, spanning nearly 20 years now, with Biden commenting that it's no longer a priority for the US to keep these troops overseas. In other news, Biden has also imposed new sanctions on Russia to punish the leadership for interfering with the 2020 US election, participating in cyber attacks, and for their serious human rights abuse in Crimea. Last week, President Biden also announced his official recognition of the Armenian genocide on the 106th anniversary since the start of the massacre. He is the first president to officially recognize the 2 million Armenians killed by the Ottoman Empire during World War II, continuing to carry out his campaign promises that pledged to use genocide to describe the killings of Armenians over a century ago. Now, removing troops from the war, this was a huge decision. This came as a surprise, at least to me personally, and it is nice to see that troops are home with their families again. But as much as getting out of this never-ending war sounds, I do worry about the Taliban taking control of the government possibly again, and the society. Now, do you think that it's going to be on us if this happens? Do you think that it's our responsibility to help them if it comes to the solution? America's very divided on this, and honestly, this could apply to any country who's asking for our help. What do you guys think? Tristan, what about you?
Well, Bree, according to the Egypt Independent, apparently the Taliban, they've had control in more territories in Afghanistan than at any point since 2001. They list that about 56% of the country's districts are under Taliban control. And even with the US presence there and their influence, the Taliban, they're still defensive in nature. Their presence is still there. And when you look at the reasons why America was in Afghanistan for the first place, the goal was to kill bin Laden. But that's been done over like almost 10 years ago, I believe. So now that the US is just there, why are they there? It's because of the resources, minerals, metals, oil. And according to the Afghanistan paper, there's no reason why the US troops should be there in the first place. There's no point in being there if they're just gonna get the resources. So that being said, to answer your question, should the US be responsible to help? I believe it's not our problem to resolve that issue if the Taliban does take over Kabul. The US has been on their land, like I said, for our purposes. And with the Taliban still gaining control despite US presence, it's just for our own gain. And I don't think it's our problem to deal with it. I mean, if we've been there for years and we're just pulling out troops now. So what are your thoughts on that, Amanda?
Well, Tristan, I was reading this really interesting article from BBC the other night, and it was called Afghan War, Do Americans Support Biden Pulling Out? And it really articulates different perspectives Americans have on the situation. For example, Michelle Dunkley, a veteran of the U.S. Air Reserves from New Jersey, she didn't agree with the decision because she claimed that the U.S. had nothing to show for this war because terrorists just wait and hide until the troops go away. And she also said that she's terrified the moment the U.S. leaves because females may not get the freedom they had with the troops. She states that, quote, the Taliban is going to throw them out out of school again and take away the few rights they do have in the country, end quote. But on the other end of the spectrum, Isaiah Reeves, child of an Army reservist sent to Afghanistan, agrees with Biden's decision. And he said the US had just contributed to destabilization and deaths of the country. He also claims that, like you mentioned, Tristan, the Taliban is still in control of the country. So even after Osama bin Laden's death, there hasn't been progress for a long while. But honestly, all in all, I think that no matter what the US decides to do at this point, like listening to both sides seems to indicate that this country will affect Afghanistan. There will be consequences regardless of what we do. But our decision in the end is very crucial to what happens and what the future of Afghanistan will be like. What are your thoughts, Jorge?
It is crucial, our decision. Also, guys, in my personal opinion, and indeed, I'm sorry, and I really feel sad for a community that is trying to find its freedom. And I think our troops moving out of that country, it's going to really affect them negatively. So I'm sad for that. However, in my personal point of view, guys, we have other problems in our country. And I think it's this administration, the one who needs to focus in our mass shootings, in our immigration reform, things that are occurring internally. Because how do we want to change other countries when we can't even control ours? I think that should be his focus. Guys, happy Diversity Month, Titans. All month long, we are celebrating the advancements and achievements made in our diverse society. This week, we'll be highlighting Kevin Allegory, who was born with Down syndrome, being recognized for always going above and beyond at his work. For more on this story, we turn to CNN reporter Sam Reed.
At Belmont Market, employees of all kinds are dedicated to their departments. Amongst them is someone particularly popular.
He's a good man. He's very well known in the area.
38-year-old Kevin Allegory, who was born with Down syndrome. Work lifts him up.
It's just a great feeling.
In fact, Kevin enjoys his job so much
Because I like it. It gives me good money.
he takes the bus from Westerly to Wakefield and works 3 days a week doing whatever's asked of him.
He's fantastic. Brings a smile to my face every time I see him.
It's very thankful to have a job. I even do bagging carriages or cardboard.
He's made friends with everyone,
I have a lot of good friends up there in Bagger.
especially the meat man, Brian.
I know his family very well.
He's in constant conversation with customers.
The flowers from the foreign department.
He's friendly
How's it going, Kevin?
Very great.
and funny.
Yes, I am. I'm a very great employee.
That is absolutely true. And to say thank you, his coworkers shined a spotlight on him and his 16 years of great service to the grocery store.
And he got as much likes as the $10 off coupon.
Even my mother called him, that's my boy.
Kevin took the job through a program run by the Frank-Oline Center.
He loves it because of the connections that he makes with the community.
He's grateful for the opportunity.
Made me feel great. Made me feel positive.
They're thankful they can count on Kevin.
I think he loves Belmont Market. And we love Kevin.
I am really proud of Kevin because he shows something that we really need in our society. Kindness, going above and beyond every single step that he's taken in his job. He represents more than just an employee. He represents a person who is trying to motivate other people to become better. So with that, honestly, we tell you, Kevin, that we are proud of you. And I think we will need more people like Kevin. And with that, that's all the time we have for today on the Report Roundtable Discussion. Have a safe week, everyone, and stay tuned for more news, views, and info to go. I'm Jorge Flores.
I'm Brie Eastlick.
Tristan Magluno.
I'm Amanda Mendoza. As always, stay fresh, Fullerton.